What's the first thing you think of when you think of the Arctic theme?
Well, first, I just wanted to clarify for our listeners the terminology that we're using. So, and I apologize for anyone who this is obvious, but I had a fellow classmate who wasn't aware of this distinction, so I wanted to just make this clear. There's there's kind of two poles in the world, right? There's the North and the South Pole. The North Pole is the Arctic, and the South Pole is the Antarctic. And the easy way to kind of differentiate the two is there's polar bears in the Arctic and there's penguins in the Antarctic. But I wanted to just share kind of a neat.
One's also north and the other one's also south. Hello, bricks, chicks, and minifigures. You are listening to AFOLs Welcome, where we talk about all things Lego from the perspective of two adult collectors. We're your co-host. I'm Grinch.
And I'm West.
And today we are diving deep into the frozen world of Lego Arctic. But before we do that, West, let's banter.
Let's
How
do
are
it,
you doing
Grinch.
this week? Did you enjoy that new song?
I don't have much to share for Brick Banter this week. I know last week I shared that I built the F1 car and Haas car, F1 race car from the Lego F1 movie. And I really enjoyed those cars. I think what I like about these sets is how relatively similar they are in one respect, but also like the main part of the chassis is so different. Each of those building experiences is just kind of its own unique thing, which is fun to see. The one thing I didn't like is the flexi tube that I got in my set bent really easily and was basically ruined. And so I had to request another one, which was unfortunate, but it is what it is. So,
But they did give you another one, right? And they didn't ask any questions, right?
well, it's on its way, I guess. So we'll see. But that's kind of where my week this week has been with bricks and everything else. And other than that, Grinch, I'm eagerly awaiting some news here in a few weeks. But how about you, Grinch? How was your week?
I want you to know, and I want all of the listeners to know, that I made a decision
Okay.
about something I did in the past month, and it involves me putting my money where my mouth is.
Okay.
I am either dumb or of average intelligence. I canceled my Pokemon pre-order.
Oh. Okay. Why is that?
I don't like pre-ordering things, and I
Mm-hmm.
know this is not a video game, right? I'm really against pre-ordering video games because the product that you get can be so terrible at times. They'll ship you an unfinished video game. In this case, you know exactly what you're getting, right? But I have a love-hate relationship with gift with purchases.
Yeah.
I really do not like pre-order gift with purchases. So I'm still on the fence, or I kind of got back on the fence of if I really wanted to collect Lego Pokemon or not. Originally, I just said I would do the original 151, but then
That's
it
a
got
lot
me
of Pokemon.
thinking. Well, I mean, just when you
I
refer
know
to
what
the
you're saying.
original 151, you just mean okay. But it's 151 Pokemon. No, I yeah. Originally, I was on the fence on even if I wanted to collect the 151. I was like, yeah, I do, but nothing's gonna stop me from getting this. And I said something a couple weeks ago, and that's they're probably this is not the only time they're gonna come out with Pikachu or Charizard, right? I mean, just look at the number of Pikachu and Charizard cards that are out there. So I figured, why pre-order it when who knows what they're going to come out with in the future,
Yeah.
right? So why not wait a little bit? And I really don't want to set this precedence of pre-ordering $650 sets, because that's kind of a dangerous game, right? Nothing is necessarily, and you could say, well, they have a pretty solid track record as far as not doing a re-release, but what if next year they announce a $200 buildable Charizard? Then what do you do? Right? And what if that one's just better? So now, that being said, if this were a $650 Lord of the Rings set and there was a pre-order gift with purchase, I'd be getting every single Lord of the Rings set either way, period, end of story, no matter what. That's not the case here, and I don't want it to be the case here. So I canceled it.
Nice. Well, I'm proud of you, Grinch. I think
I canceled it.
that was a really wise move on your part. And I think we talk a lot about things like favorite sets of the year. We rarely in the Lego community talk about sets that we regret buying. But I'll share one
We
right
buy
now.
them all.
I regret buying the Razor Crest, the playset that came out a few years ago. I bought it because I think it was the first set that they released with a Grogu minifigure in it. I thought that was neat. Then they revealed his name was Grogu. And then they destroyed the Razor Crest in season 2. And I no longer think it's neat. And I really don't have much of a desire to collect that set anymore. And so I think it's one of those things that it's okay to buy big sets. It's okay to buy stuff that you like. If there's a theme, like I bought the modular kind of sight unseen, other than what we saw online, because I like to collect the modulars. You like to collect Lord of the Rings. But if it's a theme like that where you're kind of on the fence, why not just collect it before it's retiring? You know, like you said, if they come out with another Charizard that's better, then you'll just buy that one. But if they don't, you can always just buy this one. So what is the rush?
I will buy a Pokemon set.
Yeah,
if
absolutely.
This is $650, it will be on the market for 3+ years.
Yeah.
Heck, the Millennium Falcon from 2017 is still on the market.
It's almost a decade.
Yeah. So there is absolutely zero reason to pre-order it outside of the gift with purchase.
Yeah.
Period. And I'm not collecting every single Pokemon set. There is no reason for me to get that gift with purchase.
Nice.
Now, if I was like in anybody's good graces with that past sentiment, I'm about to be in everybody's bad graces. I'm going to defend the price of the Balrog Book Nook really quick. I built it.
That's a tough spot to defend, Grinch.
I know Calvin's probably rolling over in his car right now, driving on the road to work or something. I built it, right? And one thing I immediately noticed was the amount of recolored pieces in it. And I got very excited about that. So at the time, anyways, this isn't true as much anymore. But at the time, there's a lot of new elements in that set.
Yeah.
There was the newer tile piece, the 1x2 tile piece with the notched angle on it. So it's got essentially a one stud length angle on it, 45
Similar
degree angle.
to like a Nexonite shield, but with only one complete.
Yeah, half of a Nexonite shield.
Yeah.
Kind of half of one. And that was in light gray. That was the only time that was released at the time. It's been released since 2 years later, right? Sorry, a year later.
I was going to say,
there was
it hasn't been 2 years.
Dark gray one.
You scared me.
There was a dark gray 1x2 by 1 2/3 snot piece with anti-studs on 3 sides. that was released in dark gray in that set, and quite a few of them. Again, since has been re-released, there's a lot of dark orange recolors in there. There were the Nazgul gift with purchase wings in there,
Yeah.
printed pieces in there. In my mind, I would much rather have a set that doesn't cut corners with colors, with non-printed pieces, and decides to use new elements to achieve exactly what it's trying to do, right? And so I want to semi-applaud Lego for that. Obviously, it's still overpriced. But my
I thought you were
point
defending it.
is, no,
So
I can't. It's
interesting
overpriced.
defensive tactic there to just acknowledge the argument's
What
correct.
is Chewbacca doing on a planet with a bunch of Ewoks? It doesn't make any sense. But for any South Park fans out there, but no, West. I want to say though, it's the price of a Lego set's a weird thing, right? It just price per part is such a terrible example.
Yeah.
Of value. It just is, right? And I understand it's kind of like the best that we got, but there's a lot more that goes into it. And as I was building it, I just noticed that, right? I noticed that, hey, there's a lot of new elements in this, right? New colors of pieces that we've had before. Not necessarily a new piece, but a new color. And I do like that they really did not skimp out on that in this case. There's more examples, but there's no reason for me to just sit here and talk about elements for 2 minutes to make a point. My point is that the pricing is not quite that simple. And I would much rather live in a world where we're getting printed pieces, right? We're getting new elements and new colors in the set where it needs to be in order to work. Kind of like Mario Kart, right? With his nose. I'd much rather that be a specialized piece and add 50 cents to the set than them use some 2x3 brick with some curved pieces on it or something like that and just ruin the entire thing because of it. So soapbox is over.
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it. It's one that I've had my eye on. I can't decide if I'm going to get a book nook, if I want to do that one or the Sherlock Holmes one. But I am kind of on the fence. I do think I'm leaning towards the Sherlock Holmes one instead, but I'm glad you enjoyed it, Grinch. And it's cool to hear that the experience was, in fact, good. I mean, what a great scene from that movie to be recreated in Lego. We probably aren't going to get a Mines of Moria scene anytime soon. So
you will see one if you go to Brickville, Chicago. Anyways, you know what else is exciting, West?
Some exciting Lego news.
Exciting Lego news. All right, sir. How about you run us through the news this week? It was surprisingly a very busy news week.
Yes, Grinch. There was a lot of reveals. Unfortunately, none of the reveals that you or I are waiting for or excited about. In fact, there's one on here that I need to just add because I did not capture it the first time. So throwing that one up there. But let's just get ahead. First off, let's talk collaborations. We got two interesting announcements for some upcoming collaborations. The first is we're expecting a K-pop Demon Hunters theme sometime within the next year or so. That was officially announced and teased by Lego. And then Lego also announced a collaboration between Lego and Yu-Gi-Oh! For a Lego Ideas contest, which is interesting. For the big reveals this week, we have 9. I identified 9 items to talk to. I think there was probably a few more floating around, but these are the 9 big ones.
Let's talk about the collabs real quick, and then we'll go into the reveals. I actually just watched K-pop Demon Hunters this past weekend for the first time. It was pretty good. You would love it.
I don't know if I should be.
That's a joke. West will not like it.
I mean,
it was pretty good. There was some good music. It was pretty good. As my wife said, it was cute. But no, it's like the number one movie all time in Korea now.
I was gonna say our listeners and viewers come to AFOLs Welcomes for some hot takes. And, here's the hottest of all takes, guys, which is K-pop Demon Hunters. It's pretty good.
I mean, look, I see why people liked it. All right.
Neither
They
of
have
our
not
daughters are
listened
of
to
the
like the
age.
soundtrack after it.
Yeah, where Golden was
Yeah.
playing on repeat this summer.
No,
So
my daughter's not even allowed to watch TV at her age. So
there you go.
This was all me and my wife. So I am surprised that. Kind of surprised. I'm surprised that I'm not, because Lego doesn't typically just whip out an agreement like this for some IP, right? They kind of wait until it's a little bit more proven.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
maybe
they moved
this
really fast on
signals a
this.
little bit of a change, right? And we'll talk about a reveal of a set for a movie that hasn't come out. And it's made me realize that it's been a while since we've had a set announcement before a movie. The last time was probably Marvel, right? And since then, maybe it's just more of a commentary on the state of the box office. But
film
it
industry.
used to be that used to be the news, was all Lego announced its wave of X number of sets, right? So I guess I'm surprised that it's this quick, but I'm not surprised ultimately that K-pop Demon Hunters collab.
Yeah.
My cat is jumping above me.
If
for
it
anybody
will
watching on
be
YouTube.
soon enough, or if they've missed their opportunity here. I think there's supposed to be a sequel. So if there is a sequel, I think they're probably right in the sweet spot. But if there isn't a sequel, then I think releasing a series 2 years after the movie came out might be just a little too late to kind of capture a lot of the momentum from the original release. But we'll see.
Yeah. The Yu-Gi-Oh one is interesting because to me it's an ideas challenge. And we don't typically get that a lot with IP, right? So is this kind of Lego being like, hey, we don't really know what we want to do with this theme, so why don't you guys just tell us?
Grinch, I'm not even entirely sure. Yu-Gi-Oh came out when we were kind of in between Pokemon and Magic the Gathering from like our age groups. And so it kind of skipped our generation and went, the generation or two but beneath us, or, a few years younger than us, I should say. And so I'm not really sure what this looks like. As I recall, it's, what was cool about Pokemon, right, was obviously there was the card game, but then there was the TV show that actually involved the animals, the Pokemon. Yu-Gi-Oh, the TV show, was still the card game, and that was something I never quite understood about like the lore of Yu-Gi-Oh and how it all interacted. So yeah, I'm not sure. You're just gonna have like minifigures with their like fan deck thing that they played on, and some like blue-eyed white dragon or something like that. Like I what is it? What is the iconography that you're kind of anchoring this whole theme off of, right? And from this perspective with Yu-Gi-Oh, it is a card game, and in the show it's a card game, so you're going to have to ultimately include something to that effect. I could be totally misrepresenting the show. As I acknowledged, I didn't really watch it. It never really like struck my fancy. So that's kind of where I come down on this. It's kind of like okay. And I think in the larger scheme of things, Lego exploring all these different IPs is leaving me a little wanting for more internally created content. And I know I've already mentioned this, that the City Wave this year was great. So I'm really excited to see what the City Wave this summer looks like, because I think those are the sets this year that I'm most excited about. And I wish Lego would continue to do more of their own stuff versus IP. But that's kind of where I stand.
Brickset actually did a survey. They brought it up in an article this week, but they had done a survey a few years ago saying, what's next for Lego IP, right, at this point? And it was stuff like, oh, we want them to revisit Lord of the Rings, we want Pokemon, we want, Yu-Gi-Oh. We want the One Piece. I mean, the list was on and on. What IP has Lego not done at this point?
Yeah.
And pretty much everything on that list from 3 years ago.
Everything that they
Goonies.
can do, right? And like they're doing.
Right. Studio Ghibli, I think, is the biggest outstanding one that they haven't. And then, of course, there was Avatar, but you could say they've already done that, right? But
Yeah.
of course, people like Anappa the Air Bison. So, anyways, I thought it was interesting. West, how about you run us through the reveals here that were announced this week?
Yeah, so like I said, we had 9 reveals this week that I think are worth mentioning. The first one is Project Hail Mary. Ideas came at us with an orange cat. Restaurants of the World Japan, a gift with purchase was revealed. We also got a few brickheads, including the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles brickhead, a Fortnite brickhead, and a Monsters Inc. brickhead. We got some more botanical reveals. The magnolia branches and sunflowers were revealed this week. We have a scaled up blue astronaut in the scaled up minifigure series who was revealed. And last but not least, we got official reveal of the Ford Model T in the Lego Icons line. So Grinch, what stands out for you?
2026 will forever be known as the year of Lego Brad Pitt and Lego Ryan Gosling. So there we go. That's it. Mic drop. End of the episode. End of the podcast forever. That's all. That's what we were waiting for. No, so with Project Hail Mary, obviously, first Ryan Gosling minifigure. Earlier this year, we had the first Brad Pitt minifigure. 2 prolific actors. The idea's orange cat caught me off guard. I was literally thinking, are they just doing this because the tuxedo cat sold so well? I don't remember there being 2 ideas cats, and it's just a reskin of the tuxedo. So there was the announcement on the ideas page being like introducing the new orange cat, and they just said, we were surprised about how much you love the tuxedo cat, so here's an orange one. So now he has a friend. Then I was like, yeah, okay, that's actually exactly what I thought.
So my question with that is, did the designer get credit for this one because it's still under the Lego
Yes,
Ideas
they did.
brand?
They credited him. Yep.
So kudos to Lego then.
They credited him in the article saying, here you go. And then he even said, originally I was just making my cat. So now my cat is a friend. That article is on the Lego Ideas page. Should anybody want to read it?
Nice.
Are you getting the Model T as the car guy on the show?
Well, so I want to talk about a few things that I think are interesting with this series. But I first want to go back to Project Hail Mary. I think this one is a really interesting choice from Lego's perspective. It falls in the Lego Icons line as well. It's movie based. This is Andy Weir's second movie to make kind of the big screen. The first was The Martian from a few years ago. In fact, almost. It's also been a decade
10
since
years
The Martian
ago.
came out.
Yeah.
That's scary.
11. My wife and I went on a date to see that movie.
It was a great movie.
Yeah.
So I've read both The Martian, the book. I've seen the movie. I've read some of his other books. I actually have Project Hail Mary waiting for me on my Kindle right now. I'm excited to read it. I'm curious to see how this kind of plays out from the movie's perspective. It seems like an odd choice because, like you said, it's the Hollywood movie industry is in a weird spot right now where, you know, before you'd see a lot of trailers and stuff on TV, then it was on YouTube, on Facebook. Now we get our information through all sorts of mediums. And so I've seen trailers for Project Hail Mary. I've watched the trailer on YouTube. I don't know if it's just like the way I am right now and my own interaction with media, but I haven't seen a lot of like hype for this movie, which isn't to say that it's not a good movie or it won't be a good movie. I haven't seen a lot of people clamoring like, oh, I can't wait to go see this. So it's just interesting. I'm curious to see how this plays out and why Lego decided now of all times to do their own kind of take on this. So, especially too when people have been clamoring for things like Interstellar in Lego or The Martian. I think people would like something like that too. So, I don't know. It's an interesting choice from Lego's perspective. Certainly fits the STEM genre, but yeah, we'll see how that plays out. So, and then Grinch, I did want to talk about the restaurants of the world, Japan gift with purchase real quick.
I'm so surprised.
At first, I was really excited. Then it appeared that a lot of the images, like the pieces that looked like they were printed pieces, are actually in fact stickered pieces, which was a little disappointing. I suppose maybe not super surprising, given that it's a gift with purchase. The thing that does surprise me is, remember earlier last year, this was a whole new line in icons, which was the restaurants of the world. They were kind of trying to emulate the gardens of the world, right? And they came out with the Paris Cafe. And I think it's fair to say that one.
And they did the shops too. They
did the shops gift with purchases,
the
right?
bakery, candy.
Yeah. And so I thought the restaurants of the world was going to continue on as a actual set theme or sub theme within icons. And now it's a gift with purchase. So I wonder if their feelings of how well the Parisian restaurant did has informed kind of the way that they're approaching this set release, which I think is unfortunate because I think this set release actually is going to be kind of like a sleeper hit. So we'll see how that plays out, but it just seems like an odd.
I disagree a little bit. I don't think that's a fair comparison because they feel like two very differently executed sets. Specifically the Parisian Cafe and this, right? I mean, the Parisian Cafe had almost 1,000 pieces in it, right? And this has less than 300. This also has a minifigure.
You're
so
not
it just
wrong.
Feels like two different executions altogether. My suspicion would be they did the houses of the world, they did the shops, and then they were like, oh, let's do restaurants too. And we'll do a series of 4 of them throughout the year, just like we did with the other one. And it can just be a sub theme of gift with purchase. My guess is it was independent of Parisian restaurant, and that the Parisian restaurant just did not sell well and just canceled everything else.
As I recall,
though, did cancel it.
The Parisian restaurant was in a restaurants of the world theme. And so that's where I'm wondering how that played out. So I don't think it was supposed to be its own isolated set, if I recall. But we can look that up and debate that later. I did also want to comment I think the sunflowers look fantastic. Magnolia branches are really pretty. But Grinch, you did ask me about the Ford Model T. It is. I was surprised by the choice on one hand. On the other hand, not so surprised. I mean, it's a prolific automobile that made Ford famous. So that's not a surprise. It looks fantastic. I really like the wheels. There's a new actual rubber element for the wheel. It's the tire itself, and then there's kind of they use like old sort of spindly wooden wheels, if I recall, on the Model T. So that's kind of cool. And there's just a lot of fun little features on it. So I think that'll be a fun one. I don't know if that'll be a day one or even a purchase for me, but yeah, I'm excited to see it. It looks great.
Last thing I wanted to say it's actually called the French Cafe. It does say restaurants of the world. It is in the icons line. It's not minifigure scale.
No.
Even the building, the chairs, etc. is not. Whereas this does look like it's intended to be minifigure scale, where minifigures can sit on the chairs and I assume chef can serve sushi out of it.
Yeah, I don't. You're absolutely right, Grinch. I think it's a pivot, is what I was saying. And, I mean, unless we don't have any sort of official word from Lego, but because they had billed the French Cafe as the restaurants of the world, and this is also called Restaurants of the World, that's why I'm kind of putting two and two together to say I feel like they pivoted away from the icon into gift with purchase after the icon didn't do so well. And I think that's odd because I think had they sold a Japanese sushi restaurant at the scale of the Parisian French Cafe, I think it would have done great. And I do think there were some execution issues with the French Cafe. I don't know if we need to elaborate on that, but I think our listeners probably understand what we're saying.
It sucked. No, I mean, it's a good looking set. It was just kind of it's a question mark, right? It was a display piece cafe diorama question mark, which again is why I'm kind of defending my initial point of this is minifigure scale. The lead time for something like this, I don't think allows Lego enough time to fully pivot and say, oh, let's pull that set. If they made that decision, right, it would be because of poor sales, which they wouldn't make until 6 months ago, potentially. And to take a set, this was probably being produced 8 months ago in the production line somewhere. So just my thoughts. Question though, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle brickheads. You or I aren't necessarily turtle heads here, but if we were, I don't know. it is now. It is now. If we were, is this what you would want? I feel like people have been asking for this theme to get revisited.
I was going to say, wasn't it a Lego theme already?
More sets. Yeah, it was. It sure was. And it pops up on Lego Ideas quite a bit, just not quite as frequently as SpongeBob, but it gets there every once in a while. It pops up. So is this some market research saying, oh, there's a lot of older Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle fans, so they'll like brickheads? I don't know. This would just be kind of a tease. Like if this was just Lord of the Rings, right? Like they literally did. Of course, we also got Rivendell. But if it were just Lord of the Rings, it would be a huge tease, right? Because it's kind of like we're willing to do it, but not.
They have the license, so
yeah. I don't know. Maybe that's just to kind of test the water a little bit to see if people do in fact want this. If it sells well, okay, cool. Let's get some sets out there. I don't know. Just interesting thought.
Yeah, I understand how and why people like the brickhead themes. I just really don't have much to comment on that myself. I mean, I think your sentiment is correct that seeing that would just make me want something in actual like Lego minifigure scale and form. And I kind of feel that about the Monsters Inc. set. I mean, yeah, cool to see them done in brickheads, but it'd be really fun to have like the doorway and Boo and all those other characters just done in Lego as well. So kind of leaves me wanting more and doesn't really scratch the itch that I think Lego thinks they're scratching.
Well, West, why don't we fire up the snowmobile and head over to the what us bros call the circle.
Let's do it.
Today's topic. So for today's topic, we are talking all about Arctic. So West, what's the first thing you think of when you think of the Arctic theme?
Well, first, I just wanted to clarify for our listeners the terminology that we're using. So, and I apologize for anyone who this is obvious, but I had a fellow classmate who wasn't aware of this distinction, so I wanted to just make this clear. There's kind of two poles in the world, right? There's the North and the South Pole. The North Pole is the Arctic, and the South Pole is the Antarctic. And the easy way to kind of differentiate the two is there's polar bears in the Arctic and there's penguins in the Antarctic. But I wanted to just share kind of a neat...
One's also north and the other one's also south.
There's that too. I wanted to share kind of a neat discussion about the word Arctic real quick. So it's actually Greek. It comes from Arctikos, which means near the bear. And while that is not necessarily referring to the polar bear, what it's actually referring to is the constellations Ursa Major and Ursa Minor, which appear in the northern sky, but not in the southern sky. And so Antarctic means not near the bear or land with no bears. And they're, again, not referring to polar bears, but they're referring to the constellations. ironically, it also works with polar bears. So the Arctic is land with bears, and Antarctic is land with no bears. So just a fun little connection there between geography, biology, and biomes and the sky and so. Anyways, I just wanted to share that for all of our listeners. But the first thing I think of is the winter for us in the northern hemisphere because it's the winter now. You mentioned at the top of the episode that kind of inspired us to revisit this theme, and I believe we got a lot of these in the wintertime ourselves anyways. So this one just kind of feels cozy. It feels cold. It's just a fun little vibe. So that's kind of what comes to mind when I think about the Arctic.
I think of the color orange.
Yeah.
I don't.
Hood to
It didn't
pieces.
introduce orange, but back in 2000, it got a lot of orange in circulation. A lot. So let's visit the kind of quick history of Arctic. Technically, Arctic goes all the way back to Technic in 1986 with 4 sets. Technically. It, however, really got its first wave in the year 2000 with 8 sets, which is the version that West and myself are most familiar with. That was under the town line. What's interesting is for a kind of sub-theme, it's never had the same name twice up until recently. So it was a sub-theme of town, so you could call it Town Arctic. Then in 2014, 14 years later, it was reintroduced in City, which ultimately replaced Town with 10 sets. And then 4 years after that, so a third of the time between waves for whatever reason, we had City Arctic Expedition with 7 sets. And then most recently in 2023, we had City Arctic Explorers, which was also just expanded upon last year with 2 more sets, including an Arctic Train. So, like I said, with the kind of little teaser up front, what do you think of bright orange, bright blue, more so the later waves, right? As far as highlight or accent colors. The first wave in 2000 really had that kind of classic late 90s, early 2000s Lego design, which I think is why part of that design is larger pieces, right? And therefore kind of bigger bulk. And with the larger piece, you kind of think of a bigger set, but I think it's part of the reason why so many AFOLs our age think back to sets from our childhood and maybe how they were cheaper, right? And how the price to part ratio was better. But they did have a few more larger specialized pieces than they do now. And when you see a lot of these types of sets revisited, they typically have a higher piece count and a much higher price because of it, right? So it's not necessarily the price to part that's off. It's kind of the bulk that feels off, right? This introduced translucent rock pieces, minifigures with hoods and fur lining back in 2000, snowshoes, and of course, polar bears. The Arctic sets were kind of infamous for introducing more animals too, right? We got some prehistoric animals with some saber-toothed tigers, woolly mammoths. We've got some seals most recently. So definitely animals keep popping up. And West, I know there was a little bit of kind of a story. I wouldn't necessarily say it's a narrative, right? And we may talk about that in the future, but there's definitely a little bit of a background to this theme too. What was that?
Yeah, so first I just wanted to mention that this theme really hit kind of in that nostalgic era for you and I, and in an era where there was a lot of storytelling going on with Lego. And so this theme kind of stood out as not having maybe an extraordinarily fleshed out story. Now, as you mentioned, this theme was part of the town wave at the time. And so it wasn't common for these sub themes in the town wave to necessarily have extraordinarily developed stories. But this is the general gist of the story, which is there's these explorers who go on an expedition to go find these meteors that have fallen to Earth all around the Arctic. These explorers have found the impact site and they're collecting the meteors. And inside of those rock pieces, they find things like exotic creatures. We got spiders, we got scorpions, all kind of recreated in translucent colors for collectability and to sort of imply an outer world quality. And that was really about it. We never really got anything beyond that.
Oh, Wes, sorry, I gave you the Rock Raiders card. Let me give you the Arctic one. I do think there's a lot of similarities to Rock Raiders, right? I know Rock Raiders had a much more fleshed out story, but it was collecting resources and there was some monsters in it, right? Some rock monsters. So I think we'll unpack that a little bit more later. I'm kind of foreshadowing some of the conversation, but they've done some adjacent themes, right? I think Ice Planet 2002 comes to mind. Obviously, they've done some other exploration type themes as well, jungle, underwater that live under the city line. And then I put on here Adventures Oriental Expedition. And I think we'll come back to that later if anybody's thinking I'm crazy for saying that's similar to Arctic. But as you mentioned, West, it's a kind of nostalgic theme for us, at least the 2000s one is. I've gotten a couple of the sets outside of that, but we actually had the entire original wave, didn't we?
It was one that we kind of heavily engaged in as kiddos. But like you mentioned, there's so many other themes that it kind of connects to and butts up against. You mentioned things like the Orient Expedition theme. You mentioned the Ice Planet theme. And so there's just so much fun to be had here. I do want to call out a specific set, though, one that just for me is kind of the pinnacle of this Arctic theme. And that's the Lego set Mobile Outpost set 6520. This was one of my favorite sets. It had a tracked vehicle that was done in like a 6-wide format, and it was pulling a larger sled scientific outpost, and then had kind of a secondary snowmobile on the side. And I think if I had to describe the Arctic theme in one specific set, it would be this one. Because not only does it feature the colors that you'd mentioned, the light orange and light blue, but it also has like the hooded minifigures. It has just some of the really interesting features. And the thing specifically that this theme has that I think is unique to it is the pieces that make up the mobile outpost, the sides of it. And I think they were like a 4x6 wide panel piece, right? And it had a window insert in it. And it was a larger piece, like you had mentioned. This theme had kind of bigger pieces, which was common of the time, but it really has kind of like a bunker kind of look and feel to it. And so not only was it cool for this series, but I know we used them a lot later, kind of doing kind of mocks of, Clone Wars stuff or World War II stuff or whatever we were trying to do. This piece always kind of fit in as like that bunker piece.
I like that you mentioned the mobile outpost because while it was very nostalgic for us in 2000, it also kind of transcends this theme throughout the repeats that they did. It kind of just became a little bit of a mainstay in various ways, right? There was the Arctic Ice Crawler from 2014, the Arctic Outpost from 2014. There was also the Arctic Mobile Base from 2018 that all really fairly obviously drew inspiration from that original Arctic Outpost, or Mobile Outpost, if you would. So it's almost that original X-wing of the series, kind of.
Yeah, I mean, I'm literally looking at the one from 2023. I mean, even just this summer, the one from 2025 that accompanied the train, which, like, who would have thought we'd get an Arctic train? What a interesting inclusion in sort of the larger series, right? But even this one, it's again a tracked vehicle in a light orange color scheme. Pretty much the same sort of general style. And the mobile outpost on the back is again an outpost on skis that it looks definitely a lot more modern than the old version, but it's more or less the same kind of general style and vehicle as the original set. It even includes an asteroid. I'm looking at some of the pictures now that you can go and open up and find like a gem inside. So I think that's kind of funny, just the history repeating itself there.
One of my, I think, favorite sets. It's more for the memes. Is, I guess it's the 2014. We didn't have these. I should preface that, but it's the whole 2014 wave. Anytime they had a dog team, they use the elongated handlebar piece. So there's a regular handlebar piece that you'd see on the motorcycle, the ATVs, and then there's the handlebar piece that they'll use more so for greebling, it seems like these days, but it has the elongated bars on it, so it kind of more shapes around the minifigure. It's the same piece, it just has a elongated bar on the very ends of the handlebar, so it kind of goes at a 30-degree angle, and then I guess it creates a 120-ish degree angle, but if the handlebars are at a 30-degree angle, this extension piece is at a 90 off of that. And they actually use it as the hookups for the dog sled team. And they just they've got the husky piece, and I think we need to talk about animals in this theme, but they've got the husky piece, and the husky has just an anti-stud on the top, and they just take the handlebar piece and they just stick it in the back of the husky. And it works, but it doesn't, and like it works, but it really doesn't. It looks like a handlebar sticking into a husky, just kind of pinning on it. And that's in the Arctic Helicrade, the Arctic Base Camp, the Arctic Icebreaker. Anytime they used a sled dog team, they had that same sort of get up, if you would, to harness them in.
Yeah. I think, it's funny too, looking at all these themes, some stuff kind of, I have some thoughts that kind of, I would say, come to mind when I'm looking at all of these and these comparisons. And one of the things I think is funny is if you look at like the 2014 theme, I think really tries to play it straight in that, again, typical colors, lots of orange, bright orange, still kind of there's still asteroids in this theme too. So it seems to be that that's like a connective tissue for a lot of this Arctic sub theme, but everything, all the designs and stuff are relatively realistic looking. Nothing feels like a caricature or maybe just sort of brought out of proportion. There's some silly things, and I'll point some of those out later. But that one, like I said, plays it really straight. You get into the 2018 theme, and you start to see just like there's an Arctic ice crawler, and it's kind of like this crane on legs. And there's this Arctic air transport, which is this helicopter airplane looking thing, like kind of big quadcopter, if you will, an Arctic scout truck, which is a reverse half track. So the tank treads are up front and the wheels are in the back. And like I said, there's just some really interesting kind of designs for all the vehicles. And then you get like the 2023.
Might I point out that the Husky in that set has a much better backpack? just want to say, since I brought up the Huskies.
No, absolutely. And like the 2018 wave, the one that is kind of like a little more, I wouldn't say silly, but just kind of over the top, that's the one with like the mastodon in it and stuff. So interesting that you see the all these different variations of things, but just kind of fun stuff to see and kind of captured in that Lego format. And Again, you go back into the Arctic theme for 2023 even, and it's, like I said, a little bit more back to like playing it straight a little bit in terms of what they're showing. And then the modern theme, of course, with like the train, which is, like I said, a very interesting inclusion for the Arctic, because someone would have to ostensibly build the tracks for the train to like operate on. So, it's not as wild maybe then as the theme would imply. So
Yeah, and this is one where I'd love to understand how well these sets did, because you go from 2000 to not having it for 14 years. You get it in 2014. And it was funny because actually in between 2014 and 2018, I kind of emerged from my dark age, if you would. And then when the Arctic ones came out in 2018, I was like, oh, cool. Like the revisiting art. I totally forgot about this. And I was like, wait a second. They just did this like 4 years ago. So it was just I didn't know this was that popular. And then you got it again in 2023 and then 2025. So be interesting to see how well this does, right?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would say it's a fun theme because there's just so much going on. And like I'm looking at the new 2025 truck, and it's this big 6x6 truck, and it's got this wolf and a wolf puppy. There's two adults and a puppy. There's a snowmobile. The truck itself is just, there's so much play in this series. I think it would be definitely a fun set to have. So I can see why kind of Lego revisits this theme all the time. But you had mentioned some of these adjacent themes, Grinch. Do you want to explore that a little more, of like some of the connective tissue here?
Well, we'll get there, I think. Let's first, because let's talk about what worked, because I want to talk about those adjacent themes when we talk about what didn't work.
Okay.
And I think what worked is I think this is a pro and a con. The protagonists are the explorers, right? You're really, the story is exploration, and that's actually how we played with it. We were kids when we had this originally, and we played with it that way. It was, let's go on this adventure, and the antagonist was the environment, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a really defined visual identity. And I think when it comes to Lego, that exploration versus conflict is kind of a morally on brand type of play that Lego really wanted to explore in early 2000. If you think, I joked earlier about how Rock Raiders kind of was similar when you were reading the synopsis of this theme, right? About just a group of people that were fighting for survival and trying to collect resources. Now, there are some environmental enemies, right? Polar bears, for example, the harsh conditions. I remember the original base came with the rescue helicopter, kind of assuming that somebody gets hurt.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think that's where this didn't work well, right? So I mentioned Adventures Oriental Expedition because there is a specific set with a Yeti. And I almost wonder if the lack of kind of defined narrative didn't help sell these sets well, because the exploration theme kind of gets old, especially when you have these adjacent themes in city where you're doing jungle, right? You're doing underwater exploration. Do you think this would have done better had they have gone maybe more whimsical? And do you think that's why they did that in 2018 with the mastodon, the saber-toothed tiger, the more, hey, let's go get these exciting items, that they're no longer going to get these blue clear rocks? Like had they brought in the Yeti and made the Temple of the Yeti with the destructible bridge as they crossed it, would that have been more exciting?
Yeah, I don't know, Grinch. I mean, I think if you look at the sets today that are out today, right? The two from 2025, one's that big Arctic 6x6 and the other's this train. with these rocks that fall on it, and they both have figures. It's not sort of explicitly stated, I believe, but in the train set, there is more or less a Johnny Thunder figure. And so there's sort of some connection back. I think you see Lego trying to tap into that nostalgia. But I agree with you that I think if the original story really had just a story behind it, right? I mean, even the Rock Raiders had a story that you could sort of derive from the comics or the video game about, like you said, survival. With this one, I don't know if Lego just felt like it was implied that, like, hey, here's this story of these adventures, or maybe they were kind of like, it's a blank canvas for the kids to play with and dream up their own story. But I think at the end of the day, it kind of left things ambiguous enough that it suffered from that more so than it gained from it. Whereas if they had done something similar to Johnny Thunder set in Antarctica or the Arctic and had a Johnny Thunder Arctic theme,
right,
for example, maybe using like 1930s, 1940s era technology, that could have been very interesting too, right? And so I think there was a lot of ways to sort of play it. I think Lego played it a little more straight. I think you see them exploring the theme a little bit. Like I said, there's some sillier themes, like they have an Arctic sailplane. That doesn't really make any sense. The wind chill would be so cold, the pilot would freeze. The helicopters and stuff have open sides. There's an Arctic. It's like an ice sailboat, basically, like a sailing sled, and stuff.
Well, even the sail would probably not be as effective in below 40, Fahrenheit, right? Like,
I mean, the wind's the wind, and like ice sled sailing is a thing. It does happen.
Is it? Okay.
It's just, it's such a niche thing, right? And it does require large, flat, frozen bodies of water in order to take advantage of. So you're not really going to do that across the harsh Arctic landscape that's covered in ice and rocks and all sorts of stuff. So I don't know. I mean, I just, not to say like they should have played it more straight, but I think it's just interesting how, where they decided to sort of be, I wouldn't say silly, but sort of explore the boundaries of the vector they picked, and then where they're like, nah, that's too silly for this theme or whatever. So
I think if we go back to the original Arctic, one thing that they also included was flags.
Yeah.
This kind of classic flag piece with a triangular flag, and they had, I think they were stickers, but they had numbers on them. And they used them, it wasn't in every set, but it was most of them. And they had different numbers on all of them, I think kind of denoting mostly vehicles. It would have been interesting had they had used those flags to denote different explorations, right? And what if there was a guide or pictures in the polar base, for example, that said, oh, we need to go to point 20 to go get this ancient fossil, right? And then we need to go to point 59. And that could have helped tell some of this story, because like we've kind of talked about, fast forward a little bit, with the 2000s, you do get the classic, like, there's 4 minifigures. There's the blue one, the green one, the red one, the black one, right? And that's it. And you get a various combination. I think he was blue with a black hoodie. He was the most uncommon. He was like the chief, if you would, of the crew. And then you get to 2014 and they have different faces, right? But they have a very similar attire across, and same thing in 2018. But then you get to 2023 and 2025, and you can almost see how Legos realized how important personal identity is, because you get people with hair, right? Almost none of them have hoods, or they have hoods or hats as a secondary option, but they're all shown with different styles of hair. And this latest 2025 one, and to your point as well, they have a kind of Johnny Thunder like figure. So it's almost like they kind of did recognize this in a way of, we need to tell a little bit more of a story, or at least bring a little bit more personal identity to the figures themselves.
And I mean, that's where it's interesting to see how Legos pursued that. because in the modern context, we see that through things like a TV show. We saw that a few years ago in the city theme as a whole, right? They started introducing these named characters, and so when you buy the airport set or whatever, it would say something to the effect of, "Hey, it includes like Poppy, this minifigure Poppy." And I remember kind of listening to the YouTube editorials, and they were all over it, and they're like, "Well, this character is from this TV show." And as like a casual fan, I couldn't care less like where the character was from, and so I understood like a story was trying to be told, but I wasn't super invested in it. I think as adults we recognize more of those story elements or the potential for story elements. Certainly a sort of Lego. I wouldn't call us historians by any means, but as we look back across the era of Lego, we see them attempt to try to tell stories.
PhD in Lego studies. Yes,
there you go. Yeah, but they attempt to tell stories in different ways, and so once you start to see those clues, right, just like you mentioned, seeing the flags from the first wave of Lego Arctic made you think of maps or something hinting at a larger kind of importance to those numbers specifically. Whether that's like a site or it's a dig, for example, or something to that effect. And so at the headquarters, you would naturally assume that the headquarters would have some sort of like numbering system to show like a map or something with the different flags on it, or again, something implying that like there's a larger story at play that maybe you're not fully aware of, but you're getting hints to it in the Lego story. So we just don't really get that with this, and so I think that's where the shortcoming is, to be honest.
And it's funny that we have some of this criticism because we did talk just now, or we mentioned, right, that Lego City Jungle is similar, in a similar vein as far as an exploration city set goes. And they have not revisited that since, I think that was 2015, or it was right around when they came back to Arctic.
Yeah.
But they've come back to Arctic multiple times since then. And I'm actually looking at set 60161, the jungle exploration site. And I kind of feel like I'm eating my own words because it has almost everything that we're talking about here. It's got really defined characters. It's got a really cool downed plane in an ancient, what I assume is a Aztec or Mayan or South African ancient tribal sculpture here, temple. It's got a little rescue biplane and somebody trying to get some gems from the wood, and even a really cool Venus flytrap piece. Also like a jaguar and a crocodile, or I guess that'd be an alligator. Which
now, what year was that?
Makes sense, but regardless, I want to say it was 2012 or something like that. But I don't quite remember.
Yeah, I would remind you that we did get a Return to the Jungle theme just a few years ago. Remember, that was where we got the kind of modern.
Oh yeah, that was like 2 years ago.
CMF series Johnny Thunder, but it is a lot more pared down than what you expect. And the jungle wave that you're referencing also included a mountain wave. There was like a volcano wave. There was all sorts of different variations of these man versus wild, if you will, themes of Lego that this Arctic theme kind of kicked off on its own. I mean, we'd have to go back through the full Lego history of themes, but this Arctic theme does feel like one of the first complete independent waves sort of focused on humans versus the environment and survival rather than something else. So, and it feels like it's sort of kicked off that trend of getting those type of waves in the future.
And it was 2017. But yeah, you're right. I mean, it definitely feels like they've gone back to Arctic more as well, right? Because if there's just this and then the more modern revisit, it definitely seems like you remember Arctic more often, if not anecdotally, just personally, right? So
do you think that could be
yeah,
partly because Denmark is technically a Nordic country? Arguably, well, I mean, Denmark
no, I
is
mean they
has
did stuff like
territorial sovereignty
Western,
over
right?
like Greenland, so like they are an Arctic nation. So
Right.
I'm wondering maybe if there's some connective DNA there of just sort of a proclivity towards the theme of like, as a country, this is something that speaks to us more than the jungle or the desert or something.
I don't necessarily think so. Just because you would do market research, right? You would just, I mean, they did cowboys, they did Native Americans,
Yeah.
so it's hard to say.
Yeah. So then
We
I
don't
guess,
certainly don't see Arctic come up as like a common toy in
yeah.
general, right? So maybe maybe there's just some brand manager at Lego that really likes Arctic.
I mean, a couple observations. One, we haven't really got an Antarctic set. We got the Shackleton expedition, right? So we've got the Endurance, but we never really got anything else. And I say that based purely on the fact that I don't think we've had a penguin in minifigure scale, have we? Like a animal?
Yes. Yes, there was a city set a
Okay.
couple years ago, just a little small one.
Was it a zoo though, or was it like an Arctic set?
No, it was the 2023 Arctic Wave.
Okay. Okay, then if we did get
So
one,
the 2023 Antarctic Wave. Sorry. West is going to come at me.
Well, so I mean, that would be kind of an interesting sort of separation, right? Is if we didn't get one of those, then obviously there's something to chase down there and explore a little bit, which is exploring a different biome, a different area of the world.
With a lot of these having polar bears, right? It's seemingly a lot more of them are North Pole related than South.
Yeah. So then, Grinch, I would ask you, why do you think Lego does continue to return to Arctic ultimately? If we've acknowledged that while it is a common theme and there are other themes similar to it, it still kind of remains a unique theme that Lego seemingly chooses to revisit. And we've also acknowledged to some extent, at least anecdotally, that we find it really nostalgic. Like, why do you think that is?
I have no idea. No, I think it's because of the reasons we talked about. And I think if we think of the execution of Arctic, there's not a lot of Arctic IP out there as well. When you think of jungle, it's really if Lego wants to scratch that itch, because I was looking at this jungle exploration set again, 60161, and I get a little bit of a Jurassic Park or Jurassic World Rebirth vibe. I get a little bit of an Indiana Jones vibe. Heck, I get a little bit of a Pirates of the Caribbean vibe, kind of island adventure, ancient ruins. I get a little bit of a Johnny Thunder vibe. When you look at the Arctic sets, it's Arctic, right? You're not looking at it going, man, I mean, maybe with the woolly mammoth, you're like, that reminds me of Ice Age, right? But you're really not. You're looking at it as a defined theme. Whereas I think if you look at jungle, it's not so much a defined theme as more of there's more iconography there, right? With jungle, Arctic's a little bit easier to kind of just claim as your own, maybe because nobody's there, just like the real Arctic.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an interesting point, right? Because jungle could be anywhere in the world. It could be in South America, it could be in Africa, it could be in Asia. It could be all over Asia, right? Like there's all sorts of jungles. There's the jungles of like the Pacific, and then there's the jungles of like India. And so when you say jungle, it could mean different biomes. When you say Arctic, there's really only one biome. And things like the jungle have been explored in things like Johnny Thunder. Indiana Jones, for example. And so when you see jungle represented in Lego, it often could be not only anywhere in the world, but also, kind of hints at those other themes and those thematic elements as well. Whereas with something like Arctic, it is, like you mentioned, it's kind of like a bottle theme. It's just its own thing. There's really not a lot of sort of popular culture to pull from to kind of provide context or additional storytelling elements to the theme. The one thing that struck me as we were talking about this earlier tonight was I kept going back to the John Carpenter movie, The Thing, which is set in Antarctica, but it's that horror movie from the 80s where this alien lands on the planet and it freezes and they find it one day and it morphs into, or it goes into people's bodies and, kind of takes over from the inside. And you don't know if they're the thing or if it's, your friend. Right. And so the whole horror theme is them sort of stuck in this Antarctic base, trying to determine who is the thing and who isn't. And obviously there's a reason that Lego hasn't recreated that. But when I was looking back at some of the sets, that was just the vibe.
I'm just waiting to see where you go with this. Yeah.
But that was the vibe I was getting from this. I'm like, oh, it's like The Thing. It just, but there wasn't anything else for me. Again, right? There wasn't an Indiana Jones movie set in the Arctic or Antarctic. There wasn't a Johnny Thunder series set in the Antarctic or Arctic, other than the Orient kind of Himalayas theme that was explored a little bit. Yeah. So there just isn't a lot to provide that extra context to. And so it's funny to see and, think about it, and your mind's kind of grasping for other cultural and contextual elements to pull in, and there's nothing there. So like I said, I mean, Shackleton and the Endurance is really the other closest thing we have to an Antarctic theme of survival. But even in pop culture, there's not a lot to go off of. So
I was just thinking the only two I can think of, and they're very defined aesthetically, thematically, would be Frozen, right? But that's going to be mini dolls. That's going to be Disney, more animated stylistically. When you look at a Frozen set, you're not like, oh yeah, that's the Antarctic. And I'd even argue, technically, that movie takes place during the summer. But the other one's Star Wars, when you think of Hoth, right? Those are really the only two other occasions where you get just snow Lego in general, right? I'm just talking snow Lego at this point. I'm not even saying Arctic.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, it's the Christmas holiday village, right? But again, those are incredibly specified and defined themes, whereas you don't get the Marvel and the search for Captain America and the plane, right? You don't get those type of themes even really exploring Arctic. You certainly don't get, I think they did a little bit with Ninjago at one point. It's not that they don't touch it ever,
right?
But jungle comes up a lot more, is what I guess I'm trying to say.
Well, and like I said, even jungle, in terms of biomes, mountains, jungles, volcanoes, deserts, again, you can go to almost every single continent in the world and place that biome there. You probably can't place jungles in Europe, but or deserts, I suppose.
No, technically, rainforests are only at the equator.
Well, I mean, even the rainforests of the Pacific Northwest, right? It's a stretch, but you can kind of connect these biomes to almost anywhere, where again, the Arctic and Antarctic biome are so exclusive to those areas that really the Himalayas, I think, is the closest sort of adjacent biome that we can explore. And other than that, there's not a ton there. So,
I'm now thinking of The Shining because you got me so enlightened with The Thing. And what we really need is Jack Nicholson just running around. No. I'll stop there before YouTube takes us down.
What a great Easter egg to include in the next Arctic set is just a guy with a hatchet, right? Yelling.
What's this bathroom in this broken door doing?
I was also thinking Alien versus Predator, which is a set in the Antarctic
movie
as well.
Its own, right?
Yeah. So, but again,
I was
right?
kind of thinking of the Abyss just because you mentioned. I mean, it came out around the same time as the Thing, but I always feel so isolated and claustrophobic when I think of the Thing, and I know the Abyss is underwater. But anyways,
But I think that mystery is actually what makes this theme so compelling too, is because it is something that a large portion of us as an audience, like I said, like we can go to in North America, we can experience rainforests, mountains, deserts, and volcanoes to some extent. We can't experience the Arctic until we get up to the Arctic. And so there's only certain regions of the world that really have close contact with that biome on a daily basis. For the majority of the population of the world, which for understandable reasons has migrated away from the Arctic because it's cold. It's pretty inhospitable. We just don't, there's not a lot of connectivity to it or connectiveness to it. And so I think that mysteriousness of it makes it so compelling as a theme.
yeah, it's a good point. It is kind of fantasy in its own right. You know, it just is.
And I mean, I think if Lego were to try to do another standalone wave, I think that's what they could lean into. I think they could either lean into some of the older exploration expeditions, things like summiting Mount Everest for the first time. You know, they could, National Geographic, I wouldn't say famously, but remember a few city waves ago paired with Lego for that underwater wave that they did. And so I could totally see someone like National Geographic, again, pairing with Lego, partnering with them to do something like the Everest set with Tenzing Norway and the crew summiting for the first time. And here's, you know, the team who found the South Pole first, the team who found the North Pole first. These big moments in human history that we've accomplished, these big accomplishments. I think that could be really interesting. I also think they could just, again, push more of a scientific and STEM approach to it. And then, you know, we've talked about this actually in the Indigenous Peoples episode, but the Arctic and specifically the European Arctic has a really interesting indigenous population of Sami people. And that could be something that Lego explores as well, that is Arctic adjacent and kind of maintains some really interesting storytelling that they've never explored before.
And if Lego wants to go down the rated R IP, we could get 30 Days of Night Lego.
Yes, the vampire movie, wasn't that set in Alaska? And it's the vampire movie where, because there's no sun.
Whoa! Spoiler alert! Yes,
just a trailer.
Yes,
but
yes. There's no sun for 30 days, so the vampires go to this town, and let me put it this way: feast. They feast.
I mean, we could always get a Balto Lego set.
There you go. Let's do, and he can have a handlebar sticking out of his back because that'd deliver a lot of vaccines like that. Actually, we'll just get a quadcopter drone sticking out of his back, and you don't even need a sleigh. I mean, you slay another way.
An Iditarod sled dog race set would be pretty cool.
That would be cool. Would you brick build the dogs?
No, I think you find a way, whether it's, you know, they have that
piece. Would it be interesting enough if it was a sleigh dog, you know, just a husky dog?
I still think that would be fun, like a sled dog race.
Yeah.
Cool Running. Well, not Cool Runnings. That's the bobsled. I got the Olympics on the mind. What's the other Cuba Gooding Jr. movie? Snow. Oh, man.
Snow Dogs.
Snow Dogs. Yeah. Another sled dog
just
movie.
Putting Balto to shame over here. Just stop while you're ahead. There was the one with Paul Walker too, with the
I was
like
thinking
8 Below or something like that. Yeah.
That one was in Antarctica, and wasn't that about a dog who got like stuck or something, like a dog team?
I think like all I remember is he killed an elephant seal, and I was like, we got this before Fast and the Furious 4. Okay, cool. And now we're on Fast and Furious 11, and I would definitely take 9 Below if they ever made a sequel. So it's just where we are. West, outside of the Arctics, though, let's kind of just pivot here as we wrap up our Arctic discussion. What other areas would you like to see them explore, Lego? And it could be a repeat. They've done quite a bit, right? But what would you like to see?
That's a good question. We recently got the underwater wave, which is always fun to see. And I think Lego actually does a really great job with that. They've hit the space wave a lot. I don't know if we could really improve upon any of the modern Lego City space waves. And we've done, kind of the jungle one again. I'm going to cop out and I have two thoughts. And the first one's the cop out, which is I'd rather just have like an adventurers wave, like a Johnny Thunder wave. I think a modern one would be my vote there to explore all of those biomes. But
wanting adventures is never a cop out
through the lens of Johnny Thunder. And then if that isn't satisfying enough, while they did do kind of a deep water wave in the last one with some really interesting fish, they had that lantern fish with like the little dangly thing, the glowing kind of, or the angler fish rather, right? So it's a trap.
I believe the technical term is a little dangly thing.
A little dangly thing, yeah.
We're following.
Right. I think it would be really cool. Their submarines have always kind of lacked sort of those deep water submarine looks. The look of like the Alvin, the submarine that found the Titanic, or some of the ones that go even further underwater. This last submarine wave, the submarine itself was, I think, a little underwhelming. And so I think it'd be really cool to get like a real proper exploration submarine out of Lego. And I think that would be a really interesting inclusion in the wave. We've had ships before. I've never really seen an icebreaker. We kind of had an icebreaker in the 2014 wave, but like those have a very specific design for the hulls and stuff. And so to see some more purpose-built icebreaker ships would be kind of cool. And I know I'm kind of just now pivoting, but I want to throw it to you, Grinch. What would you like to see?
A few episodes back, I said I'd love to see something out back, and I stand by that. I did say a koala, minifig koala would be cute, and we actually got one already. It was actually in a CMF, and I did not remember that, so check that box. Teak, big teak, as they say on Lego Masters Australia. But I would really like to see a Outback wave. And I'd like to see, and maybe this is where you do the narrative of just a group of explorers that maybe goes to the Arctic, maybe goes underwater, and goes to just some of these different unique biomes. And we actually even had somebody write in that they wish Lego did, and I forget who wrote it in. I do apologize, but they said they wished Lego did a journey to the center of the earth type of theme. Yeah. And I think you could have a lot of fun with that because you could really get almost infinitely creative with building some random monsters, right? You could have T-Rexes, you could have giant flying bat pterodactyl things, right? I mean, you could really get fairly creative there as far as what you did, what biomes you decided to do, and you could definitely make it more narratively driven as they travel through to the center of the earth.
I'd like to add too, then, because you're getting the creative juices flowing here. A Jules Verne wave, like a proper Jules Verne, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea kind of Nautilus wave, not just a gift with purchase. But then take that
of not just a gift with purchase of Jules Verne with a tiny little suggestion of a Nautilus. Yeah.
And why I suggest that is because I know steampunk has been really big and Lego just does not seem to want to engage with steampunk that much. And I feel like that would be a way to engage in steampunk without maybe having to fully commit, but you're doing so in like a very credible way, if that makes sense. And I think that would be just a really fun way to explore that. I mean, Jules Verne had stories about going to the moon in rockets, right? He had stories about circling around the world. He had stories about the Nautilus. It's just, there's so much fun you could have with something like that I think would be really interesting.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, absolutely. So more IP based for like, no, I'm just kidding. I'm just trolling.
I probably suspect actually that that's all in the public domain at this point too. So
it might be at this point. Yeah.
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 You hear
or
that?
Close.
No licensing fees.
Or close enough for an excuse to do it when it does become it, right?
There you go. Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that about wraps it up for our Arctic discussion. Real quick. Favorite set, go.
Oh. Favorite Arctic set?
Favorite Arctic set.
I think I have to go back to the research, the basically the one I already mentioned earlier. I just think that's like the epitome of Arctic sets. So that would be my favorite. How about you? Just
so I don't say the same one that you did, I would go with the polar base. That one was awesome. It was just kind of a cool little modular base. It was big enough, right? It wasn't huge, but when you go back and you look at it was a $50 set.
Oh my gosh.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So
yeah,
I will leave it there. And I will go check the brick mail. Brick mail. All right, West, why don't you take us away on our first brick mail?
All right, Grinch. So brick mail today comes from Chico, and he writes, "Hi guys, I've been listening to your podcast for about a year now, and I love listening on my Monday mornings. This is about a month late, but I wanted to know your thoughts. I just went to see the new Avatar movie, and I was thinking about buying one of the sets from a couple years ago, but decided not to because I personally think it was a miss. They have so much material to work with, but the movie borders on their no war mindset. I would like them to do what they've done with Dune. The ornithopter was perfect. It comes with every minifig that a fan wants, and a helicopter from the Avatar with the main characters from the first movie would have been a lot better than the whole theme that to me seems to be directed more towards children with smaller builds, even though it's not a kid's movie. Makes me wonder if Disney was behind it because they do own a part of the films. Would love to hear what you guys think. Keep up the good work. Chico." So Grinch, what do you think? I know you have most of the Avatar sets, or if not all of them, correct?
I have them all.
And the helicopter was what? The RD Samson or something like that?
Yeah, actually, I kind of love that it flirts with Lego's own no war mindset because you did get a minifigure in military fatigues. So that was cool. You got a pretty cool military style mech suit that was pretty awesome. Yeah, I don't know. I like the Avatar sets. I think we talked I think it was before the holiday about would they come out with new sets because they hadn't announced anything for Fire and Ash. And spoiler alert, Avatar is still a $2 billion on average movie franchise. But I like your call out with the Dune ornithopter. Huh?
I said, how well did this one do?
It broke $1 billion.
Okay. Huh.
So with the other two both over 2 billion, it still averages more than 2 billion, which is insane. But it's actually, I believe it's still in theaters. So, but I do think the Dune ornithopter is a good call out, and I actually think it is the future and current direction of Lego to do these kind of one-off complete sets, right? Where you do get a $200 build with all the minifigures. I can think of quite a few Jaws, for example, and I know that's Lego Ideas. The Nightmare Before Christmas, The Office, right? I know those are all Lego Ideas sets, but gosh, I was about to say Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, but I was also about to say Twilight. But as you think of a lot of these kind of random one-off IPs, Star Trek, for example, now I obviously think Star Trek could be one that they explore more, but I do think you start to get these more just a singular type set. Project Hail Mary, for example, there's only been one revealed. We don't know if we're getting more, but I could see that could be it, right? I mean, that
I
most
would
likely
suspect
is
it's it.
going to be
Yeah.
it. Yeah, I mean, you never say never, but if I was a betting man, somebody wants to trade on Kalshi, go right ahead, right? But I do think the future of Lego is kind of these just one-off-ish sets, depending on the theme, right?
Yeah, Grinch. I mean, I think that's exactly spot on, and I think Project Hail Mary is the set that really gives us kind of the best path forward here. And I'd be interested to see if Lego kind of reverses course and starts to do stuff that maybe they could have done in the past, right? That falls under that like icons line, just like the Dune Ornithopter. Again, at the top of the episode, I mentioned The Martian, Interstellar. There seems to be some sets that I think Lego could do very easily and do kind of just once in one, not like a limited wave per se, but here, this is your, for example, Interstellar.
The definitive, right?
Yeah, if you do that landing vehicle on the planet with the 3 astronauts and TARS, running around the waves and everything, I think you've pretty much nailed the Interstellar series. You don't really need to do anything more there. For The Martian, if you did the Matt Damon character with the Martian rover or something, you've kind of, ironically in both movies, stuck in space in both movies. But anyways, you kind of nail the vibe, right? And so this Project Hail Mary set is again one more example of you do the thing, you call it good, you move on. And I think that's something that Lego could ultimately explore in the icons line, and it appears like that is what the line is sort of being optimized for. So, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I know at the top of the episode I mentioned sort of feeling oversaturated with IP right now, but I think that's exactly where we should be exploring instead of, I don't know, I guess I have mixed feelings about that, but
I could get sidetracked and on a tangent here, but hey, it's our only brick mail for today, so let's buckle in, folks. Here comes a whole another hour of AFOLs Welcome, but no, I actually think it's good. And I know we were talking with somebody who wasn't happy with all the IP, but I'd rather them if this is the route, right? If it's IP, 80% of what Lego's going to come out with is IP. I'd rather them do these one-off definitive sets, because I think the other part of Lego, right, is that creativity and inspiration. And sometimes all you need is for Lego to come out with an Ornithopter set, get your suite of Dune minifigures, and then you can build something else on your own, right?
Right.
You can build other Dune sets. We don't need Lego to come out with every single set. It certainly makes it easier, right? And for some people, they're just not going to mock build, and that's totally fine. But it does kind of add to that other part of what makes Lego, and that is building on your own too, right? So
absolutely,
I don't mind it if it is just the one set, right? In fact, I'd even say I'd prefer it, because I'm a little bit of a degenerate myself, and should Lego come out with more sets, I'm gonna have to buy more sets, so my wallet thanks it, because if it was another $200 Dune set or the Twilight House, I don't have to get the Twilight House. Awesome. Awesome.
No, fair
it's
call.
Not necessarily for me. Even though at one point, even that was on my wish list. So, again, never say never.
I mean, if it goes on sale.
Yeah, I mean, it's 30% off. I mean, you're just buying it for the pieces at that point, right? I mean, it's just too good, right? It's too good to be true. That wolf build. No, I'm just kidding. That's a joke. And that is a wrap of another episode of AFOLs Welcome. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe and leave us a review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you are listening to this show. If you would like to write the podcast, please email us at afolswelcome@gmail.com or follow us on Instagram at AFOLsWelcome. Thank you for listening, and we will catch you on the next one.
See ya.